So all of this is happening as world leaders are convening for the G7 summit in Canada. You know, that's the gathering of the most powerful leaders to help shape global policy and tackle the biggest challenges facing the world right now. And right now, there are many. So far, the president has met with the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney. He is also set to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky. The president also telling ABC News he's open to President Putin serving as mediator now between Israel and Iran. Let's bring in White House correspondent Karen Travers for more. So, Karen, obviously the fighting in the Middle East is overshadowing everything at the G7. Bring us up to date.
Yeah, that's going to now be on the agenda for these world leaders. And I think a week ago, you certainly would have talked about how Russia and Ukraine would have been at the top of the agenda, as well as trade and energy issues. But Iran and Israel now will be something that these leaders are talking about. And there's an urgency, of course, to this. Kira, when the president met with the Canadian Prime Minister earlier today, he was asked, what would it take for the U.S. to potentially get involved in Israel's fight against Iran? And notably, Kira, the president said, I don't want to talk about that. Just yesterday, he told our Rachel Scott that it was possible that the U.S. could get involved, but now today he's not going any further. Yesterday, there were supposed to be talks between the U.S. and Iran in Oman over a nuclear agreement. That was canceled after those Israeli strikes late last week. The president, though, said today he still believes that those talks could be resuscitated and that now there's actually a potential better chance of an agreement being reached because Iran has to come to the table, that they're in a worse negotiating position. The president said today, Kira, they have to make a deal. And he said Iran is not winning this war.
So Trump promised 90 trade deals in 90 days. That didn't happen. Could we see new deals announced maybe after this week's summit?
Yeah, that clock is ticking to July 9th. That's when that 90-day pause runs out. And there was so much bombastic optimism, really, from the administration about how they could reach 90 deals in 90 days. But that date is coming up very quickly. And you have European leaders at the G7 summit who are going to likely be pushing the president on the sidelines of these meetings to try and reach a deal with the European Commission. The head of the European Commission had said over the weekend that she had talked to the president and thought that they could have maybe a good deal before that July 9th deadline. The president was talking about trade with Canada earlier today and indicated that they're still very far apart, that he and Prime Minister Carney have very different views on the U.S.-Canada trade relationship at this point. So, Kira, while they'll be talking about this, it's hard to see how they could all come to any unilateral agreements with the United States at this two-day summit when they're focused on so many big issues. And they still have time. July 9th is the big deadline for the president.
Indeed. All right. Expectations for Trump's meeting with Zelensky.
You know, Kira, when you look at this, the president today, in the first thing he said at the G7 summit, when he was talking to reporters, he started talking about how Russia was not involved anymore. It used to be the G8, of course, and then Russia was kicked out in 2014 after they annexed Crimea. And it was really striking to hear the president, who has talked about this before, but in his first chance before the cameras, start talking about that. Now, he was asked, do you think Russia should be let into the G7? And he said he wasn't thinking that the timing was right for that. He said too much water has gone over the dam. But he said it's a mistake when these world leaders gather and spend so much time talking about Russia that Russia doesn't have a seat at the table. That all doesn't set a great stage for his conversation with Ukraine's President Zelensky, to hear him essentially saying that Russia should be involved and that these world leaders should be giving more consideration to Vladimir Putin's point. Kira, again today, the president said he has a great relationship with Putin, and the other world leaders don't even talk to him.
Karen Travers at the White House for us. Karen, thank you.